Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. In the 1950s, Arty and Anna Raptis left their small fishing village in Greece to start a new life in South Australia. Both had that entrepreneurial flair so typical of many migrants that they opened a fish and chip shop, while Arty continued fishing and filleting what he caught for local shops. 3 generations later, A. Raptis and Sons is one of Australia's largest privately owned fishing companies. Today's CEO is Arty's grandson, Arty Raptis. The business has thrived by embracing modern technology and innovation, building on its reputation of delivering premium seafood while keeping true to its family origins. Arty takes Chris Ashmore back to when he was a boy and his father was in charge. The business took off, he says, when they moved to Queensland.
So that was really the first kind of milestone moment where the business went from my dad taking a trawler from Adelaide all the way around from the Western Australian side, all the way up to the Gulf of Carpentaria in North Queensland. And it really progressed from owning one boat and operating one boat to eventually owning and operating more than 20. So the business in that late 70s through the 80s really took off, and it was the pioneering times of the fishery. My dad had built a factory and was unloading the boats. And my grandfather was still alive, and he was a very famous net maker. And he was making nets not only for ourselves, but for other companies as well. And my grandfather taught me how to make nets when I was a very young boy, around 10, 12 years old. To this day, we still use those net designs in our business. Obviously, they've considerably progressed in terms of the net material and whatnot, but those original designs were something that I've maintained as a bit of a historical piece in our business because we hold on to that history, right?
Well, that's fantastic, and that's important, yeah?
It is. And then there were some other milestone moments as well. They came later in the late 80s when I think my mum got pretty sick and tired of living up in that small country town. We wanted to progress as a family. The business was getting bigger. And then my father bought the Queensland Fish Board from the government. At the time, the National Party was privatising a lot of public assets, and there was an opportunity that my father had to purchase the facility that we're currently in now from back then. But that was the next milestone moment in the late 80s where I was finishing school. I was then working with my father at the start of my career, sort of post-school, and really then went on to work with my father through my career, further developing and further growing the business. And then the final moment was me taking over as CEO 13 years ago, and my father stepping down, me taking over. I was ready, I was hungry, I was keen, and I've really been able to progress the business through that third phase. And I would think from then to now, the business really has essentially doubled again in that period of time. And I always think there's nothing like youthful enthusiasm to really push things along. So there you go.
Absolutely. Now, well, if we look at today and where the company's placed, who do you market to? And is it mostly Australia or overseas?
It's changed. So I think in those early days, like through the 80s and the 90s, there was a very strong demand for Australian seafood in particularly Southeast Asia. We were one of the early pioneers of trading into China, trading into Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong. So we became quite established. My father's brother, my Uncle Con, he was very enterprising in that space. And between him and my father, they really pushed that export piece. And it was a really amazing time. We got to see lots of containers of our product going out the door. It gave us that cash flow, that cash injection back into our business that we needed to help us to grow. But then it changed. So I think around about the time when I took over as CEO is really when Australian seafood became very popular in Australia by Australian consumers. So it switched. So where we were sort of 80% export, it's now 80% local sales, domestic sales. And there's a lot of reasons why. And it's been very, very exciting to see the market mature here in Australia, where there's that desire for Australian produce, for Australian content. And everybody wants to be a master chef. Everybody loves a cooking show. Everybody wants to try and experiment and try different things and, subscribe to Australian produce. And so we've ridden that wave with marketing and good marketing and value adding and, providing the market with the product in a format that people can take home and cook and use easily. So that's been a lot of fun.
What regions do you fish in?
We fish right across the top of Australia. So from, say, the Torres Strait Islands all the way across to the Kimberleys. That area of water space is huge. So we have a couple of bases. One's in Corumba. We've got another base in Darwin as well. So we fish right across the top of Australia. And then we also fish right across the bottom of Australia as well. So from all along the Great Australian Bight, from Adelaide all the way across to almost Perth. And so we have a couple of bases, one in Port Lincoln and one in Adelaide. So we've got 19 vessels. So we've got boats coming in and going out all the time in both those ports. And then we just truck that product to market, whether it's to our factory in Brisbane for further processing or to the market in Sydney, where we've got a wholesale depot. We're part of the Sydney fish markets. We're part of going to the new Sydney fish markets as well. So that's very exciting. Yeah, so we've got depots all around the country, but we mainly catch in the northern and southern part of Australia.
When it comes to new technology and innovation, where does Raptis Seafood fit with that? What changes have you seen in the industry?
A few. So one of the things has been sustainability, and to be a sustainable business means that when we go back next year, this product's still there. And so we had to create some things that would make us more sustainable, which we did. And some of those things are that there's something called bycatch. And so bycatch is the things that you don't want to catch. So we didn't want to be catching those things in our nets. So we created technology where those different species of animals can escape, whether they were turtles, sharks, small fish, so that we could just retain our prawns. So that was a kind of a bit of a turning point for us, a technology turning point. Then after that, we started to look at how we could euthanize animals on board our vessels so that, we were being humane with what we were catching and not allowing those animals to suffer. So we came up with more technology of how we could do that very humanely, which then moved on to how we could handle product more efficiently to improve our quality. Then once we'd sort of done a lot of those things, we started to look outside of our industry of what is out there that we could bring in. And so we took some technology that was being used in the Formula One car racing in terms of the way in which the team managers would speak to their drivers in that, what they call a closed loop or a closed data loop, so nobody else could hear. And so we started to do that too, and how in which we were talking to our crew, talking to our skippers and captains on our boats, how we were being able to communicate with them, how it is that we were transferring data between ourselves and them on that closed loop, all that telemetry piece, like you'd see the team managers could see from the pits, we could see from our office, and our engineers could see the telemetry on board the vessels. So that was a really important moment in time. And then beyond that, we also have a few planes that we fly around as well. And we can not only see what we're doing, we can see if there's any kind of movement in the water in terms of being able to spot marine life, plus also spy on what our competitors are doing. So we were taking technology from the military and putting it on board our planes to be able to go and observe all sorts of things that were helping us to have that competitive edge. So we've done a lot of stuff like that, and we continue to do that today. We've got a technology committee within our business that we support. Anything and everything that could be a good idea or a bad idea, we will test it out. And we also have some stuff in our factory as well. So there's been quite a lot.
Any particular challenges you face running the business?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really about competition, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Competition makes us better at the business that we run, but there's been a saturation of product through aquaculture. So aquaculture has the volumes of products that have been grown, particularly across Southeast Asia, is just getting more and more all the time. And so we're the wild catch sectors. We're catching fish and prawns from our boats. We're competing against farmers that are growing fish and prawns in ponds. And so there's an oversaturation in the market globally, and our mission is to make ourselves different, to differentiate the wild catch against the aquaculture product and which one's better. There's an argument on both sides, and that's really playing out at the moment. That's what the real challenge is today.
Well, it's an incredible journey that you've been on. Where to from here, Arty? What's the future for Raptis?
Well, it was my grandfather, then it was my father, and then it was me. So I just see myself as a custodian of this business. You know, it's not actually about me. It's about the business progressing to the next generation. And we've established a family office. We're called the Raptis Next Generation. Most of my cousins don't actually work in the business, but they've got children that may have some interest. I've got children. So we're wanting to establish that next generation piece so that somebody else can take my place. Plus also making sure that I'm not hanging on for dear life of my CEO job forever and a day until I essentially fall off the chair and into a coffin and into the ground, that I want to be doing it at a time that allows for the next youthful enthusiasm.
That was Arty Raptis. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.